Hi guys, so part two of designing for development. So in the previous lesson we covered more like a strategy approach towards the design, and now I wanted to show you some technical things that will make the life of the developers way easier, and also it will simplify lots of things that we need to rework in design, and it will save us a lot of time. So basically this is something that I'm currently creating for our own website. This is basically to work with components. You will see that there's another lesson which is all about main components, child components, instances, and so on. But basically over here, it's really important to create these components so that when you replicate this across the board in the entire Figma, you will always have these instances all connected to the main component. And if you decide, for example, to change, let's say I want to change this icon to a black. Okay, so you can see that here this instance also changed, and instead of having to change everything manually, you can just change that once and it will get replicated across the board. So this is something that will also help the developers when it comes to having like one main component that they have to copy and paste across the board, and they won't have to pay attention to the small to see if there are small inconsistencies between the different icons, for example. And also another thing is, this is like a good practice for creating buttons. So to have a primary button with two states, maybe a default stage over here, you can see the properties, and then to have a hover state, a selected state, a default state, you should have everything lined out over here so that all things are taken into consideration in the design phase, and the developers won't have to design a default state for that button, so that you will make sure that everything is consistent when we send this to development. Then something else I wanted to show you is the issue with let me copy this here, and we are going to deattach this instance. So something that is really, really important when you're working with pieces of text and containers and maybe text blocks or whatever, is to have like a precise padding that won't vary across the board. So something that you should do is, if you don't have these things framed, let me unframe this. Here we have the rectangle on the one hand, and then we have the text. So you will have to select everything, frame it, and then use auto layout. So you will see that here the button shrunk a bit, and if you need this to have a precise vertical padding, let's say you need it to be in 16 because you're following more or less the guidelines of material design and everything is multiple of 8. So here we should have 16, and you will see that this has the same padding at the top and at the bottom. So for the hover state, the button will have the same sizes. If you need to change the text, that will also have the same size, and the padding will remain the same. Also, pay attention to set it to be like in a central alignment, both vertically and horizontally, so that when you increase or decrease the text, the button will also change the same way. So let's say instead of schedule a call, I want to write here submit. Let's say submit. So you can see that the button is still consistent because it has the same padding all around the text, but it adapts to the amount of content that you have within it. So you can just create one component for this. Let's say this is a primary button. So let's rename it primary button, and then you create an instance, and instead of saying submit, you want this to say send. So the button is still consistent, it's smaller because it's adapted to the text, but it remains more or less the same. That's huge for development, so keep it in mind.